Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin, this year in Bitcoin. Today is December the 27th, 2019. Strong hand. Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. In motion. Offended by selling. Conviction. Oh, we had it. Unconfiscatable. What a year it has been. We've been relentless. We've all been unique beasts. Hello, my elite friends. Welcome to the final This Week in Bitcoin show of this beautiful year. Guy Swann is here. Rocky Palumbo is here. Gabriel D is here. Pound that like button. Everybody spread the word. There's so much to cover today. So we're going to do highlights of the year, some predictions for next year, some news. Oh, it's going to be fun. Let's start it off on the technical tip with Guy Swann. You sent me all this information about technical highlights of this year. Give it all out there. Tell the people about Schnorr and Lightning. What happened this year with that stuff?
Okay, so and this is one of my favorite things about bear markets that I've come to love over the many years in Bitcoin, was just that like everything gets quiet and so much stuff gets done. This has been particularly just for Lightning and the idea of like smart contract functionality and the ability to build like streamlined, very reliable layer 2 technology. Lightning obviously being the obvious one, but just in a very broad sense of what we can do with Bitcoin as a layer 1 and like layer 2 and layer 3 networks to build on top of this has been amazing. I mean, Lightning went from like I set up my first Lightning node in, I think it was June of last year. So it was a handful of months after it had finally been released on mainnet, when everything was just kind of exploding. Everybody was opening channels. Nobody had any idea what was going on, but everybody was having fun because it was a new toy to play with. But it wasn't usable. You couldn't really do much with it, and it wasn't really implemented anywhere. And it was all painfully beta software. And this year, it has just completely changed the game, and it's been mostly developments that have happened in the background. And one thing that I'm just so excited about, that I was really surprised actually happened this year, which I think it's like 2 weeks old now that it's live in the C Lightning, and I think it's live on it's live on LND and async now, if I'm not mistaken. But AMPs, which are multi-path payments, one of the biggest limitations of Lightning Network so far has been that when you open a channel, you can open up multiple channels, but you can only send a payment over a single channel. So like the way these little contracts work is I can open up 3 $100 contracts, and I've got $300 worth of Bitcoin on the Lightning Network, but I can only send a max payment of $100, just because there's not an easy way to pull payments, to lock payments across multiple paths at the same time. And now that is actually live. I didn't think we would get it this soon. It was kind of like real quiet as to what was going on with it, and then seemed like it was released. And that's super exciting, because it just means that when you start looking at Lightning now, you don't have to think about channels. You don't have to like all of the important, like really hardcore stuff that's happening is moving into the background. It's starting to disappear. You will see one balance. It will be your Lightning balance, and you can either spend all of it or you can spend a tiny amount of it, and you don't have to care or think about what's happening. And that's where most of the development has been. Loop in and loop out are another huge, that happens around midway through this year. That was another huge thing just in usability, because if there's ever a problem with a route being available, or let's say you're using a Lightning wallet and you want to pay a Bitcoin invoice, like the service you're using doesn't use Bitcoin, doesn't have Lightning implemented. Like, that's a horrible user experience to like get a Bitcoin invoice or a Lightning invoice and have to go to a different wallet for each one. That's terrible. but there's no reason that those things can't work together. You just have to figure out how to do what's really conceptually a simple thing, atomic swap between Bitcoin and Lightning. And it's a Lightning service that's just available on the network. And that's how you loop in, loop out. You can send money to refund, like to recharge a Lightning wallet. That's how I send payments. Like I've been using the Breeze wallet, which is my favorite right now of the handful that you can get on iOS. But I use it all the time. I use it for a fold. I use it to they were having like a 20% sats back on Starbucks not too long ago, and I was, good lord, I was buying way too much coffee, way too much overpriced coffee to get the sats back for that one. Bit refill, another huge one, just because really gift cards have been kind of the key thing there. But I've been using loop in and loop out to refill stuff from like a Bitcoin balance. And then there's another wallet called Moon, Muun, that's actually using that as the main function of the wallet. And you can pay Lightning invoices by sending Bitcoin to an atomic swap into Lightning. So you're using loop in, and it's just so fascinating to see these. There's still like little pieces of it, and it's still kind of spread out. But once we have a single wallet that begins to integrate all of these things, since each one of these individually is kind of trying a different route and specializing on making a different one of these tools work, it's so clear. It's so clear that we are a mere months away from somebody just dropping a wallet that has no idea, that the user never has a clue that they're using either Lightning or Bitcoin, and it's entirely seamless. Like, we're way closer to that than I thought we were. And that's just been one of the craziest things to me, that all of the major tools that needed to get us there are here. Like we're not really waiting for anything else. There's still a lot of streamlining to do, and a lot of a mitigating of payment failures and stuff to do. But for the most part, all the tools are here. It can be cleaned up. Neutrino, that's one of the best things. Neutrino has been a huge boost in the speed of having a mobile wallet. And that actually just got a really big efficiency boost not too long ago. I think it was only like a month or so ago. But it's basically a way to privately keep track of all the blocks that your relative payments, the payments that relate to you, are in, without having to give up your privacy. Like, mobile wallets, light wallets, have always been a disaster for privacy. And Neutrino basically solves that without having to give the huge trade-off of running a whole friggin' node on your phone, which is obviously a nightmare. And I think the headers, the way Neutrino's stuff is, I think Breeze is taking like 20 megs of data, I think, to get that boost. And if I don't open it for like a week or two, it takes like a couple of seconds to sync, and that's it. That's the trade-off to get privacy in your Lightning, in your relative like Lightning channels and stuff in a mobile wallet now. And that happened this year. Like that was a year ago, not possible.
Dude, you have opened this show the exact way I want. Man, you laid it down. The people want to hear about the technical stuff, baby. Now, you jumped around something a little bit here.
Yep.
And I'm going to ask you a straight up question. And I'm going to ask the other guest, because the other guests wanted to speak about this too. You've inspired them all, I'm sure. This is kind of a vague statement, though. Will Lightning be ready for prime time in 2020? You made an illusion that it's just a matter of time before there's a wallet that you wouldn't even know what the heck that you're even using Lightning. Is this the year of Lightning coming up?
It's hard to say if like what the definition of quote unquote prime time is, but yes, I think we will see a wallet. I think we'll see software where the user doesn't really have to care at all what's happening in the back end. They don't have to know what's happening, and that there is a single experience of Bitcoin, whether they're using Lightning or Bitcoin. I think there are too many minds working on it, and the tools are already here. Yes. Short answer, yeah.
All right. Gabriel, you wanted to say something, baby.
Hi, everyone. Rocky, thanks for your summation. I got a question for
That was
you.
a rock. What? You mean
I'm Rocky.
he's
Oh,
Rocky?
sorry. Where
That
am
was
I?
Guy.
I'm Guy. I didn't introduce myself. What's up,
Yeah.
guys? Glad to be on the show. I just
They're,
like kind of
they're
jumped right
all
into
linked
this.
to below. They're all linked to below. Pound that like button, Gabriel.
Sorry, Kai. Thank you so much for that. It's become as the technology proliferates, it becomes impossible for any one person to keep up on all the details.
Oh, yeah.
And like with every area of Bitcoin development, each one continues along the path. I mean, yeah, sometimes you close up and you just finish up a project, for example, segregated witness, but even that has versioning now, and they come out with new sort of developments on top of it. But something like the signature paradigms, and it's kind of very additive, especially with Bitcoin's very strong ethos of soft forks. In other words, you never obviate things from the past, and you only add them on, and you never hard fork, so that people aren't forked off against their will, like in every other fake coin, basically. So well, with Bitcoin, we have an ever proliferating fields of technology, and so one of the things that I've been really focusing on as far as Lightning is on the usability side. Actually, it's been great to see some really good UX developments and strides being made in the industry in general. Guys like Jack Mallers is really focused on it, making it great looking and easily usable on the front end. But one of the really major usability hurdles with Lightning is the capacity question. And so basically, and the really big one that I'm personally focused on is the inbound capacity. What this is when Lightning was first developed, basically you had to put Bitcoin onto the Lightning Network in order to receive Bitcoin. You had to pay to get paid. And there are some private solutions being used now. And I was doing some research several months ago, not that long ago, middle of the year, and I found that they seemed relatively expensive. But it was good to see that some strides were being made. That's usually how it goes with new tech. Private players come in, they charge a lot because it's the first examples, and I see that as a major, maybe the biggest hurdle in general, because there's this dream of everybody just can use Lightning, and there's instant payments flying back and forth everywhere, and anybody like a farmer who's got a tiny field of turnips in Ghana can just jump online with their smartphone, their $20 smartphone, and get a Lightning wallet and get paid for turnips. Well, that's not really possible right now, because you have it's the chicken and egg. It's like catch-22. You have to have Bitcoin before you can get Bitcoin. So what's the latest? Can you give us an update perhaps on the latest inbound capacity solutions out there?
Yeah. So that's where loop in, loop out, and then splice in, splice out come into play. And those are technologies that just basically hide the fact that you're stashing away inside of a normal Bitcoin transaction and update to changing the balances in your Lightning wallet. So in the short term, you'd have a slightly higher fee to get additional capacity into your channel. And that's where it's crazy exciting to talk about the ability to aggregate fees over the Lightning network to maybe do sorts of transactions like this in aggregating with a lot of other people making transactions at the same time. And that's something that I think will be far more, it'll just be a simpler process once we have Schnorr signatures, but that's still probably a year away. I hope that we see essentially the network working towards activation on Schnorr, because that'll be a huge improvement for exactly that sort of stuff. But it's about hiding that the fact that you do have to change channel capacity, like you're talking about, on the fly, and you would need a Bitcoin transaction to do it. So it's in using your existing Lightning presence to help pay for the fee. and aggregating transaction with many other channels or payments that are happening at the same time. And then also is the idea of an LSP, which this is just really exciting to me from the concept of building a kind of a global and very open market around making this easy for people. Breeze is one that I would consider. They're kind of like really focusing. Roy Scheinfeld is really focusing on that concept specifically in offering up having liquidity available to people in order to have people connect to their nodes so that they have a very strong presence. There's this really strong market incentive to solve that exact problem. And those are exactly the sorts of services that I mean, imagine like the Apple Store. Imagine if imagine a future where the Lightning Network is ubiquitous. Let's say they've got channels with their customers. They're going to aggregate everybody opening and closing channels at the same time. And they're probably going to be able to offer the fee as a loss leader just to keep people connected to their store. But that aside, these are all those things that I mentioned are specifically those tools that make that vastly easier and make a really open and permissionless market to offering up liquidity on behalf of the user already, which is like something like Breeze is doing. Jack Mallers said that if they purchase over Olympus, that he's going to, I think, match what they buy, if I'm not mistaken. But all of them are coming up with a lot of different methods. In fact, there's 4 or 5 that are being tested out right now that I know of. And I think we'll just see which one the market finds most sustainable. And we've got this global open market to just kind of test all the different methods. So I think there's a lot happening specifically around that hurdle. And I think 2020, we're going to start seeing a standard develop on the best solution.
Very cool. So would you say, it sounds to me like we're about 18 months out at the least of like a really seamless, 100% smooth, cheap onboard for totally new Lightning and Bitcoin user, simultaneous receipt of like you get paid for your labor or something. First time, zero balance Lightning wallet, pay a smallish fee to open your very first channel the very first time, and then pay hardly anything after that. Maybe 18 months to 24 months.
I would have agreed with you 2 months ago. But with what I've seen in the last 2 months with Olympus, Jack Mallers Olympus and Escher, and then SparkSwap, like a good friend of mine in the Raleigh Bitcoin meetup made a video of doing a SparkSwap from a debit card, 1 cent to a Lightning channel. And Breeze is one of those, another ones that you can just open up immediately, and you have I think you wait a couple of minutes for the confirmation. But then Jack Mallers Olympus just dropped, and you're in seconds from debit card purchase to in a Lightning channel, because they use something called a turbo channel where you can just automatically start updating before it even confirms, because you're already holding the insurance part of the contract. So it doesn't really matter. You can just go ahead and start doing business.
Yeah, you're already sending the transactions back and forth, and they're
exactly,
all valid. They hit the chain.
Exactly. You wrote a commitment already at the opening, so why not just keep updating it? I don't think we're that far away. I would have agreed with you 2 months ago, but with a couple of things that I have seen, I think we're closer than that.
All right, dudes. Rocky, you've been chopping at the bit there. Get in on this, man. Get in on this Lightning Network discussion.
Well, I'd have to agree that the Lightning Network is the big star of 2019 in the Bitcoin world. Some of the updates I've been following with Lightning are the atomic swaps, the L2, which is basically just a complete update to Lightning. Channel factories, dual funded channels, Sphinx, which is a way to send in Lightning without an invoice. Rendezvous routing, trampoline payments, turbo channels, watchtowers, splicing, amps, and submarine swaps. These improvements are just going to make Lightning, the way to transact in Bitcoin. And I've been running a Lightning node since February of this year. And I did have a couple of routing issues when I first got it started up. I'm not really sure if it was because of the network was so new back then, or if it was because I didn't have things set up quite right, because I turned off the autopilot because I wanted to play with the settings myself to learn more about it, right? So, but just a few months after that, I would say for the past 7 months, maybe 8 months, I haven't had any routing issues. Just every payment goes through instantly.
What's the main wallet you use? Sorry.
Oh no, yeah, go ahead.
I'm using the Ride the Lightning interface, the web interface with a Lightning node on the Raspberry Pi. I'm using Raspberry Blitz.
Sweet.
All right, Rocky. My question is for prediction. Since 2019 has been a very good year for Lightning, is 2020 going to be a bigger year? Is this going to be? You guys are talking some technical sophistication there. Is it going to be brought down to the regular man's level in 2020, or we're going to have to wait a little bit longer? Rocky.
Well, I think 2019 was pretty good for Bitcoin, right? The price is almost double what it was on January 1st, 2019.
True.
So that's a pretty good year. I think 2020 is going to be better for Bitcoin than 2019. But I think 2021 will be much better than 2020. So I think just good things are coming. Just strong hand, be patient. It's all coming.
All right. Now, one thing that Gabriel, you started talking, and before we leave, Rocky, do you have any other highlights of the year that you wanted to mention that are outside of Lightning Network?
No, not really. Lightning was like my main topic for 2019. I think Guy kind of stole the show on that he did a great job. I agree with everything he said. That's all awesome.
Yeah, that was freaking awesome. Pound that like button for Lightning. All right, Gabriel, you probably had other highlights you wanted to mention from 2019.
Rocky actually just mentioned it, which is the price is proving a lot of the stock to flow people to have been correct in their predictions. And when the bear market hit in 2018, people were saying, this is we're gonna be in a bear market a long time, or people were in denial and they were saying, we're gonna go up again in 2018, and we're following really closely to the halving schedule. It's actually quite stunning to have seen this 4-year cycle play out. After the very first cycle when things were spinning up, you can't really compare the beginning of that curve. But the second and third cycles have been really similar. The first halving in 2012 happened during a bit of a bear market. 2013 saw 2 big bull pushes, followed by followed by a bear market in 2014. People are forgetting that 2015, even though there was a lot of contentious talking, there were rage quits by obviously nefarious devs that came straight out of Western countries, 3-letter agencies. And it was really, obvious to a lot of us that what was going on and they were trying to attack it. It failed. And 2015 was actually a bull market. It was very similar to this year. Things started off, looking at the chart now, things bottomed out right at the beginning of 2015, around $180. And things ended up the year at a real high in the 400s. I mean, so that was actually, a bigger, that's a similar move to this year, 100-ish%, maybe a little more actually. But the halvings, of course, are faster than every 4 years. But I think that's a really big story this year is Bitcoin's recovery from a bear market where a lot of more trolls were coming out of the woodwork saying, "Oh, your project is finally over," and those voices have gone very quiet for good reason. The thing is 11 years old and shows no signs of stopping. It's very steady. It's on this course of adoption, and the tech is amazing. Other projects that many people were predicting would overtake Bitcoin are continuing their bear markets, especially when looked at against Bitcoin. I mean, Ethereum, it's really, anybody who has technical expertise now is really rethinking their opinions about Ethereum if they were bullish. And as they're starting to understand, oh, well, maybe my understanding of base technology layers was worse than I thought, because the dangers of centralization and poor planning are really starting to reap the harvest over there. Even more centralized projects are not doing great in the market for all the reasons that we've been explaining for the past 6-7 years. So that's a really big story. And then to follow up on something Guy said about just the base tech, I mean, he mentioned Taproot and Schnorr signatures and all these things that have been developed, and really a lot of those kinks and wrinkles have been worked out as the BIPs have been standardized. And now we're in like roadmap territory, which is always like, extremely, what do I want to say? Extremely like hopeful and optimistic, because we've already figured out the math. We've already got the proofs. Literally, guys like Gregory Maxwell and Adam Back laying out the mathematical proofs that informed the BIPs, design, and now the roadmap territory. And like I said, 2020, these things are actually going to be coming out, and it's quite interesting to see that. And I think that something that Andreas Antonopoulos has been talking about a long time, which is sort of what's the word for it? Rigidification.
Oh, I know the word. Ossification.
Yes, the ossification of the protocol. I think I agree that it's relatively inevitable, and things have been early enough and slow enough that we've been able to make these relatively extreme upgrades and not changes to the protocol, but additions to the protocol, such as segregated witness 2 years ago, and Taproot and Schnorr signatures. These are quite very low level additions to the protocol. I have a feeling that this next wave, it's going to be another 3 years of upgrades to the base protocol. This may be the last wave of major additions to the protocol. We might not have the freedom to do that because the system will be so large, and at some point the developers will decide, okay, this is version 1.0, and I think maybe around that point we might not see any large major additions to the protocol, and that's for good reason. The problems with Bitcoin, or pain points, corner cases, edge cases, major bugs. I mean, transaction malleability was a terrible bug, and the devs were working really hard on that for 6 years, and they came up with a solution to it, and it freaking fixed it. And the next problem is way too much trackability. We've got private companies, basically basing their business models on the fact that Bitcoin has traceable transactions, and that's the next big push is these confidential transactions and different ways to obscure the provenance of transaction history. And that's just another sort of bug in the protocol. Good money can't be traceable. That's why cash was so useful for so long. And that was determined very sagely by a court in Scotland in the 18th century. And these type of things are getting ironed out. And once they're all ironed out, additions after that will be sort of gravy. So it's a really amazing time to see the protocol solidifying around this set suite of features and technologies.
All right, let's move on to a very specific thing that was alluded to. Guy Swann, is the halving priced in?
No. I don't think there's any possible way for it to be priced in. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because there's been a lot of Twitter pushback against stock to flow recently, which I don't quite know why. Like in the last couple of weeks, I've been seeing it constantly. Yeah. But I think no matter what, even if you talk about it being priced in, there's two things that priced in has to account for. One is that the supply isn't what it will be when we get to that point, and B, the enormous price of time. So if it is priced in, well, then it's priced in at the 1 year discount to getting there, and the associated risks with that. But regardless of that, no, I don't think so. I don't think anybody even really knows. Like the portion of the community that is aware of the whole stock to flow thing is so itty bitty. Like it is a tiny corner of Bitcoin Twitter that it actually even knows about this thing. And the idea that it's priced in, like that the market is already going to have the price that it's supposed to be at that time, like worked out and sorted today, I think is just kind of pretending that markets are some perfect theoretical universe rather than the crazy social beast that it is. But no, the short answer is absolutely not.
Yeah, I think that's I think no is everybody agrees on that. But I think it's like a social attack almost, these people that keep bringing it up, or they're just bored and there's nothing else to talk about. I don't know. Rocky, do you have any thoughts on that aspect of the halving it all? And you've got some screen shares. You've got some topics you wanted to bring up too, and I wanted you to do that now.
Well, about the halving, I don't think it's priced in either. A lot of the price action depends on traders, and traders are too busy trading to even concern themselves with the technical aspects of Bitcoin. But what I think the halving does is really simple. People like to complicate this way too much, I think. You have the halving, and what it does is supports the price going up over the next 4 years, and then you have another halving, rinse and repeat. And that's all it is. And it's really just that simple.
And by the way, Gabriel said that basically said that also it's cyclical. We're repeating 2015 again. It's the 210,000 block theory that the price, and then it's more than a theory, that the price, if any point in time you go back 210,000 blocks, it's worth more than it was back then in terms of fiat. So this thing, it really all might boil down to the math of it all, that it's all going to always be cyclical like this. Who knows? The pattern hasn't been broken yet. All right. Now, we were talking about Lightning before. And of course, the Bcash people always said that Lightning would never work. So what's up with this? What's up with your Bcash stuff here?
Well, I would like to know what the block size limit is on Bcash. Does anybody know? Guy or Gabriel, do you know what it is?
Isn't it 8 right now? If I'm
I
not
believe
mistaken,
it was
they had
8.
talked about 32 for a while, but I don't know if it ever actually happened because they had to fix the emergency difficulty. I mean, the new, most recent, the DAA, the difficulty adjustment algorithm that replaced the other broken algorithm that they used, and they had to fix that recently. But I don't know if they did actually did the block size increase at the same time. Let me check.
Well, according to this article, it did go to 32 megs on May 2018.
Oh, 2018. Okay.
Yes.
Who knows? Yeah.
It says right here. It says today because
I
it's receiving
remember
its
that.
own.
Yeah, I thought it was
right. That happened before. That happened even before BSV. That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, 32 megs.
All right.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So that's May of 2018. This article came out a few months ago, September of this year, and it took was based on interviewing a BCH dev, this Amory guy, and he said in a Reddit post that the Bcash miners are unwilling to mine blocks bigger than 2 megs. And when this article first came out, that there was a direct quote from him where he said, if they mined too many blocks that were 2 megs or bigger, that the nodes would trip over themselves. So basically saying that it would take too long to propagate the blocks across the network. And you could have a lot of orphan blocks and what have you, which is of course really bad for the network, and it promotes mining centralization. So I don't know why, but for some reason that quote was taken out of this article. But if you did read this in September when it first came out, it was there. I saw it. I read it. And then there were some quotes from Roger Ver. He had to put his 2 cents in here, and he was asked if Bitcoin Cash truly had this 2 meg limit. And of course, he didn't really give a direct answer, a yes or no answer. He talked about how he's working with these companies. I'm already working directly with payment companies that expect to reach close to 100 transactions per second with 100 million plus users around the world. If BCH had this 2 meg limit, they wouldn't be interested. So he didn't really answer the question. What he answered was these companies wouldn't be interested if they did, but not if it did or not, right? Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
He kind of danced around the question, right? And so then down here in his conclusion, he's referring to Bitcoin here as having a 1 meg block limit, right? Which I don't know, hasn't had that since, SegWit got put in August of 2017. So 2.5 years, it hasn't had a 1 meg limit. And
Correct.
if you go to like Sundance here, if you go to Sundance here, you could see the megs, the block size here in megabytes, because it's weighted now, but this would be the megabyte equivalent. It's 1.3. What did I say?
Sundance or something.
Sundance. Okay, yeah, Coindance. So you can see that most of the blocks here are well over a meg. In fact, there was a tweet from I think it was the 4 Satoshis. These guys do a lot of good tweets. If you're on Twitter, you really should follow these guys. They got a sample here that they tweeted, I think it was last week, where you could see all these blocks, how big they are. Here's a 1.6, another 1.6, 1.4. These are all in a row, right? 1.6, 1.8, another 1.8, surrounding a 1.7, and following up with a 2.33, right? Okay. All right, Roger. So why are you still talking about Bitcoin having a 1 meg block size limit? And actually, the block size limit in Bitcoin right now is actually 4 megs. It's just with the current version of SegWit, it can only make the blocks so big and still full the old blocks that they're 1 meg, because it has to be backwards compatible because it's a soft fork. Now the next version of SegWit with Schnorr signatures will be able to go up to 4 meg blocks and still fool the old nodes that they're just 1 meg. So you got to have that backwards compatibility to be a soft fork. So he goes on to say here that the Bcash block size restriction isn't true. Right? What that one dev was talking about, that if they mine blocks over 2 megs, the nodes would trip over themselves. Well, I don't know where he's getting this information from, because the information that I see, it shows that it is true. Okay, so this is the Joho mempool. Yeah,
Rocky, why are we talking about this scammer? I'm not sure what the relevance.
Because
he's been lying for years. Why do we care?
Because Adam asked me about it before the show. He's all,
okay, cool.
What's going
Adam,
on with?
What do you want to know?
Well, that's Rocky's been wanting to talk about this Bcash thing for a while. So it's the year in review.
Circular argument.
Because there's one point where I'm going to get at too when he's done, but it's an important one too. So continue with this is the one time to get it out, man. This is the one, because what's going to happen? The question is, what's going to happen with their halving? What will it still, is it going to die when they have their halving? Because they're having a halving next year also.
Is it in May too, or when is it? July?
That's a good question. It's beforehand. It is going to be beforehand at this point, if I'm not mistaken.
And this could help the people, who kind of blindly follow, King of the Trolls, and maybe it might shed a little light on, what he's saying. You can't just take it as a matter of fact. You got to do your own research, right? This is what I'm doing here. I'm showing my research to combat what he said in that article. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. So let's look at the data. So here is a representation over the past year of the mempool in BCH. So you can see how pitiful, the transaction amounts are here. They're just so tiny. Their average block is less than 1/4 of 1 meg on average, right? So there's tiny blocks, but every once in a while their mempool does get backed up. But they've got a 32 meg, which I just showed right over here. I just showed that they got a 32 meg block size. So, and Roger says it's not true that they have a 2 meg limit. So if we zoom in on this here, you could see, got to wait for it to propagate here. There you go. So if you see, it got backed up to 19 and a half megs here, and it took like 279 blocks to clear that. Well, I don't know what kind of math King of the Trolls uses, but the math I learned in the 4th grade tells me that if you have a 32 meg block and you're backed up 19 megs, you could do that in one block, not 279, right? So
here's something really funny about that, and I was thinking about with Lightning. I was going back through because Lightning has become vastly more usable this year than like at the beginning of the year. I wasn't using it for real payments. Like I was using it to play with it. And by the way, this RTL thing that you were talking about, the Ride the Lightning, I had not seen this. This is like the coolest looking thing ever. So I'm going to try this out. Thank you for mentioning that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So Lightning has literally become usable this year, and I have just started using it and have just kind of stopped. Like originally, I remember my sentiment change is that when a payment happened, I would be really excited because it was like, oh my God, a Lightning payment worked. I'm so excited. And now I'm so used to it working that when something goes wrong, I'm like, oh crap, that's right. This is still Lightning, and sometimes things don't work perfectly. But I've had, like with all those tools and technologies that we talked about with like loop in, loop out, splice in, amps, all of these, and being able to lean on the Bitcoin network when something goes wrong. Right now, I have about a 1 in 20 payment failure rate. Parker Lewis has a wonderful series. I'm not sure if you guys have listened to or read it on Unchained Capital, the Unchained Capital blog called Gradually Then Slowly. And there's one article that he talks about said Bitcoin is not too slow. And he talks about the discovery of digital scarcity being a 0 to 1 invention, whereas payments are a 1 to N. We can forever make incremental improvements to it. And right now, at this stage, with hardly any of these tools actually in play, I have a 1 in 20 to needing to resort to an on-chain payment when Lightning fails, which means I essentially have a 20x increase in my block size capacity as far as my individual use of Bitcoin. That is right now when everything is still vastly, like still needs to go to the actual user side, like the easy user experience side, and implement all of these tools together. I would not be surprised at all if we could double that or more in the next 5 or 6 months as far as like the usable software. That means though, that if everyone could use it just at the stage that it's in, we have the equivalent of 40 megabyte blocks on Bitcoin. We have the equivalent of our current block size, but only needing a payment, only needing an on-chain transaction for 1 out of every 20 in order to mitigate when something goes wrong or when we need more liquidity or we need inbound capacity or anything like that. If my experience is something that can be applied to everyone, that we've got essentially a 40 megabyte block size and no nodes are tripping over anything. And I don't know, that's just it just shows the vast chasm between the engineering mindsets of Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the 5% failure rate or reset rate is like really high compared to what it will be. It's going to be way under 1%. It'll be maybe 0.5% or something. I could see would be like 1 in 200. So then you're talking about another 10x capacity. Like 100x from here is like around the corner for sure. And then once you have like machine to machine payments, it'll be millions of times higher. They'll be going back and forth, sending these little blips of data zillions of times, and you'll have way more capacity than some stupid Visa.
Well, that's what I meant by ready for prime time too. I mean, getting the failure rate up to a very non-noticeable level, which is what you were saying. You said right now it's 1 in 20 or something. I mean, that's not very good.
That's my personal experience. But the funny thing is when you implement things like loop in and loop out or splice in and splice out as like in the background of your app, is that your payment would go through without you knowing that you had to resort to an on-chain payment. So your experience would never see a failure, but your app would simply have to jump out and do an on-chain transaction 1 out of every 20 to make up for when Lightning couldn't fill the bill, essentially.
Okay. All right. So now we've brought up the Bcash altcoin, which is a way to transition to an altcoin question that I have for Gabriel D about the what's to come in 2020. Will Libra happen in 2020? Gabriel D.
I don't think so. No, I don't think that's going to happen. There's way too many roadblocks, and this is like the whole reason why, you know, Bitcoin's decentralized and nobody else is able to do anything. I don't think Libra is actually going to ever happen.
Ever?
No,
that's a big one. That's a big
I can agree with that. Maybe.
I don't think. I think that they might try to launch a different type of stablecoin, more similar to the existing ones. No, I don't think Libra. I do think that they could very well like flesh out their sort of payment rail, you know, their normal fiat payment rail a lot more and try to compete with Apple and the other players in the space. But that space is getting really very competitive, and fees are plunging, which is great. So, you know, the more competition, the better. And then eventually when you just swap out the bottom layer, it's going to be, you know, ridiculously cheap. The Lightning fees are going to be insanely cheap when that is, you know, extremely normal for everybody. But, you know, as far as predictions, I think this is a good time maybe to jump into my thoughts about the 20s and how it relates to Bitcoin, if I may.
Yes.
I think that you guys, we've been talking, and I think I love this panel. Everybody's, you know, really on point here. This is terrific. You guys are terrific. I love it. And you guys, you know, haven't said anything I thought was dumb, which is really awesome. You said really fucking smart things. Excuse my language. You said really highly intelligent things. I really agree with Guy's opinions that he was expressing about the Halving being priced in, Rocky as well. It's not priced in. There's too many unknowns. That's my diagnosis about why it's not priced in. And I don't mean that in the sense of, oh, traders don't know what's the price is going to do. No. I'm talking about macro events that directly affect energy production around the world in various ways. You know, that's from weather. We're in the middle of the strongest solar minimum that anybody alive has ever seen. This is something more along the lines of the 19th century Maunder minimum, or even go back 400 years or 2,000 years to the grand solar minimums that nipped entire empires in the bud. This is a highly volatile time where we're seeing massive farming failures. We're seeing the typical increase in pestilence, where we've got a massive outbreak of swine flu or swine fever in China that caused this year the pork prices are up 130%. It's a massive situation where, you know, for example, President Trump is using that as leverage in his trade negotiations with China because they need our pork, or not our pork, but the pork of the United States. This is a time of huge upheavals in societies. We're seeing a rise of nationalistic tendencies in the reaction to the globalistic politics of the past 3, 4, 5 decades, even longer, 10 decades, I would say. And the Federal Reserve is being what do I want to say? Scrutinized. Yeah, it's being scrutinized by politicians in the United States to a greater degree than ever before, especially the Trump administration. The level of uncertainties ahead is much higher than we've ever seen in anybody's lifetime, including the greatest generation. No, greatest generation are all dead. The World War II generation, the people, the very oldest members of the population in their 90s, 100s, 110. These people haven't even seen the type of volatility that we are going into and that we've seen over the past even 5 years. So, and I mean that in a positive sense too. I've just mentioned some negatives, you know, high weather dislocations, populations getting dislocated, food insecurity, but also we've got the possible secret technology releases ahead.
Oh.
Now, this is a woo-woo subject.
This is it. This is why they love Gabriel. Pound that like button. Continue.
Very few people talk about this in you know, mainstream media, but we're in a situation now where the Navy this year released 3 incredibly mind-blowing patents for free energy, superconductor, and anti-gravity technology. This is technology that's been around for 80 years, according to insider testimonies. And the you know, Trump administration's propaganda arm, known as QAnon, has been dropping all sorts of basically pro-Trump and pro-military propaganda for 3 years, and their predictions have been very much on point. I think it's a legitimate propaganda arm where they're trying to promote the ideas of the Trump administration as best they can. When I say legitimate, I mean it's genuinely military insiders leaking information and attempting to influence the population's views on things. And whether they're accurate or not, I can't say, but I think it's genuine military insiders behind it. It's not a troll thing. And they're talking about extraterrestrials. They're talking about, you know, all the secret technology. And I think that is something that is also not priced in. Very, very few traders are looking ahead to see how the markets will be dislocated by a sudden release of new energy technology. For example, in Bitcoin, it's uniquely suited actually to sudden technology increases because of the difficulty adjustment. It's kind of insane. What we might have is an extremely fast, you know, difficulty period where one mining consortium sucks up all the Bitcoin, but only for 2 weeks. Difficulty adjusts. And, you know, then you've got, say, 2 or 3 more miners that have got the new free energy tech. But we're talking about, say, a 5 million-fold increase in energy efficiency. And that's something that would dislocate the entire human society. It would be really intense. I think Bitcoin would definitely survive it, but it would cause a lot of minor upheaval. It's something that's not priced in at all. Bitcoin would do very well, actually, because many other markets would fail, but Bitcoin would be able to survive it. This is something that, you know, people aren't talking about and would affect mining really, really directly and affect Bitcoin price. Bitcoin's price could actually surge in such a situation because it becomes far more useful.
I want to say the technologies. I don't know about the secret technologies, whatever you want to call it. Remember, Gabriel does not represent the views of the show, but it's awesome what he says, because everybody loves it. But we are entering a golden age, and I am so excited. You know, Gabriel at first said there's a lot of uncertainty. Bring on the uncertainty. Bring it on. And that's what Gabe, you said that also. Who knows what is going to come? And yes, if all of a sudden there was free energy or something even close to it, we wouldn't be talking about Bitcoin. The whole world would be we'd be in a completely new realm. And that's the promise of this new decade. That is the promise of the 2020s. The technological sophistication, it's going parabolic, whatever you want to say, through the stratosphere. I am pumped for this. I really am pumped for this. And I wanted to ask, well, Guy, you're about to say something, and then I was going to ask Rocky. So, and remember, we got 10 more minutes. We only got 10 minutes to go.
Oh, okay. I'll try to be quick. So I think I totally agree that in the next couple of decades, we're going to see more change in how society and people are organized, and which I think we've actually seen the seeds of all of it. I think we can already tell if we're looking very closely and kind of stepping back from the architectures that we're used to looking at, we can actually see what's happening. But in the next 2 years, we will see a greater, like more powerful shift in how society is organized than we've ever seen in human history, to be frank. And whether it's funny that you bring up all of this uncertainty, because there's a piece that I read, I believe this is Hayek that stresses this specifically. It may be Hans Hermann Hoppe, I can't remember. But that money is a tool. As a tool, money is a hedge against uncertainty. That's as being the most liquid good in the economy. It's where you put value when you're not sure what's going to happen. And like if you put it in a chicken, chicken's going to rot. If you put it in, like any other, all of the other goods do not have the specific characteristics of money which make it perfect for keeping value across time, most specifically during incredible uncertainty, because we just don't know what the future is going to hold. And sound money does that job better than anything else. And I think all of that other stuff aside, the fact that we have Bitcoin as a tool, if it continues to do its job and continues to enforce the monetary policy that it has, that alone will create an explosion of wealth and efficiency that we cannot understate in this conversation, that there's no real possible way to explain what it will create, because all we're ever going to see is it'll be like sitting in the 1990s with the internet and going, it's like, oh yeah, we'll be able to listen to radio on a computer. And it's like, well, no, that's not what the internet is going to do. But yes, that's one teeny tiny little itty bitty piece of the amazing explosion of wealth that's going to come from it. So
that's a great point. Awesome point.
I want Rocky, I'm going to ask you a lot here. Your predictions, they don't have to be earth shattering. Is Libra actually going to be happening? And in a week, we've got proof of keys, if you want to talk about a prediction for that too. Rocky, it's yours.
Yeah, that's a lot.
You can pick and choose.
As far as predictions go, I think, like I said before, I think Bitcoin in 2020 is going to be, bigger, better, and, more of a price increase than 2019. And Lightning is going to have even more, advances than it had in 2019. They're just both going to get much better, basically. But what Gabriel just said, that was awesome. I gotta ask you, do you have links that I can hit you up for the military patents?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a very fishy patents by under an unknown scientist's name, whose name is Salvatore Pais, which of course means savior, nation savior. And this is a guy nobody's ever heard of before. And of course, he just magically comes out with 3 incredible, groundbreaking technologies. One detail about those patents, the patent office in the U.S. said, "What? You guys are like relying on science that is not proven." So they went and they had a captain, a Navy captain. These are Navy patents. The Navy captain is on record. He said he sent a letter back and said, all of these technologies are currently operable. And they granted the patents.
All right.
Okay. Do you have DMs open on Twitter?
I certainly do. Hit me
and
up.
all of these dudes are linked to below. I'm sorry if I feel like I'm rushing, but we only got 5 minutes before I got to light those Hanukkah candles. It's the 6th night, and I'm cut off then. But Rocky, talk about any proof of keys thoughts, because you're a guy that really encourages people to be responsible with their Bitcoin. Will it bring down any exchanges? I mean, that's a big question.
Well, I hope not. I don't like people losing their Bitcoins, but if it, weeds out some of the weaker ones, I think that's a good thing. But you shouldn't, have your Bitcoin on there. I mean, I know if you're trading, you need to have a certain amount on there. But if you're just buying and let it sit there, no, you got to get your Bitcoin off. Please get your Bitcoins off exchanges. Okay. If you're not trading. And if you are trading, keep the absolute minimum there you need.
All right, we'll be talking about this in a week. Guy Swann, your conclusionary and any other thoughts, Rocky, before we
Well, yeah, I'd just like to do a plug for like a minute. I need
please.
Okay, so let me share a screen here. So I just like people have any questions about Bitcoin, they should go to justlearnbitcoin.com. And also I want you to take note of this black square right here to click on here. This is a very important project here to help return 14.2 Bitcoins to Pastor Phil. This is a guy who's been into Bitcoin for a very long time and never had a lot of money. He was just adding small amounts of Bitcoin to his wallet over the years. And then he got hacked. He fell victim to what I believe was a DNS hijacking attack. And you could see me interview him here on this show on the UK Bitcoin Master Show. So you get a feel for who he is here. You have all these people endorsing him. This is not a scam. He really lost these coins. And, if you could do a little donation to help him get his 14 coins back, that would be great. He also lost 500 Litecoins on that wallet. And if you click here, you could go to the tally coin where you could do a donation. And I'd also just like to say, if you don't go to justlearnbitcoin.com, you could go to bitcoinstolen.com, and that will take you to this website here. And also, you just read the family story. His friend wrote this story, and it's really about a 5-10 minute read at max. And you'll see this guy. He's a living saint. He served his country in the military. He married his high school sweetheart. He had a couple kids, and then he rescued these kids who have these disabilities. He even adopted 2 of them. He's just a living saint, and for this to happen to him was just awful. So if you could just donate anything to him at all, that'd be great.
All right, control and remember to be careful when you're clicking on things out there, and just know what you're doing when you don't move around stuff too much. All right, let Guy, Gabriel, your conclusionary thoughts. We'll end with Guy here, and we got 3 minutes.
I'm randomly going to throw out a prediction for the next cycle, for the next after the next euphoric peak of price. I think we're headed for a stable period of around 45 grand. That might be 2021 to 2022. That's my random prediction for the early 20s price level.
All right. And thank you, both of you dudes, and Guy Swann for being on. Guy Swann, you will get the final word, and Gabriel is linked to below, of course. Guy, you get the last word, baby. All right.
Rocky, I'd say I know I've been in Bitcoin for a very long time, and I know that feeling. So that really sucks. 14 Bitcoin is a tough break too. Good Lord. Yeah. So, but by the way, if anybody doesn't know, I do the Crypto Economy podcast with Guy Swann. And the main format of the show is like pretty much every day I read some article or work. One of the quintessential works, like the one I just rebooted actually just before Christmas, was Shelling Out: The Origins of Money by Nick Szabo. So I'm trying to make every brilliant piece of writing in the Bitcoin space into an audiobook. So that everybody can just consume all of Bitcoin in audio, but with
a nice Southern accent,
with a nice Southern drawl. That's right. I'm so excited about this year. I think 2019 has been an epic year of laying the groundwork to start putting, like, we've basically got all of the pieces. Like, we've got the gear, we've got the piston, we've got the cast, we've got everything that's going to make the engine and the automobile. And I think in the next year in particular, but next 2 years, we're going to finally build the automobile with this thing. And I think it's going to be an absolute game changer. We're going to see apps this year that literally just cannot exist on any other platform, that don't make any economic sense or technical sense. We're going to see things. We're going to see the social media equivalent to the social media to the internet. We will see that to Bitcoin, the ability to just interface with an entire economic and financial network that is completely permissionless, and where anyone just can openly create a new financial tool. And all that groundwork is laid, and the last pieces of that puzzle are getting put together. And I think 2020 is going to be a hell of a damn year. And if it settles at 40 to 50,000, like Gabriel says, I think that will be underpriced.
Dudes, that's a great way to end the year. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy Hanukkah, everyone. Real quick, Rocky, it was bitcoinstolen.com. That was the URL?
Yes, to go right to Phil's donation site.
That's a freaking great URL. When this is all over with, he gets all his Bitcoin. You should sell that URL. You get a lot of money for it. All right.
And also, I'd just like to say, if you do watch that first video on that page, it does explain like what happened to him, and so you can make sure it doesn't happen to you. Yes. Everyone should watch that video.
Yeah, that's important. All right, dudes, that is it. Thank you very much, panel. Thank you very much, everybody out there. Happy New Year. New show every day. Beyond Bitcoin is tomorrow. Bitcoin Rabbi will be on. Shabbat Shalom. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister. Subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Share this video. Go light your Hanukkah candles right now, which I am going to do. See you all later. Bye-bye.
Happy Hanukkah.